Hey guys. Okay, so it's 8 o'clock. I'm going to get started. Everybody else is just going to have to be late and they will have to just join us when they join us. So, welcome to Emotional Intelligence 101, where we are talking about in this class how do you improve your communication, work on your conflict resolution, and build your connection with emotional intelligence. This is week 2. And so this week we are talking about the power of your emotions. Thanks for checking in. We are talking about the power of your emotions. So we are specifically going to look at today how your emotions have influenced the decisions that you have made, the things that you focus on in life, and your relationships. And then we're going to go over the reflection question that asks you what emotions show up most often day to day and how do they influence your behavior. Your responses was pretty interesting to that. So we're going to get to that towards the end. Last week, we went over the basics of emotional intelligence. And so we talked about what emotional intelligence is and how it is your ability to recognize, identify, and understand your own emotions, but as well as your partner's in order to have a healthier relationship. And so everything is always going to start with self-awareness, whether this is this class or even if we work one-on-one. All of my approach is from an inside out. So I'm always going to start with you, identifying your areas of growth. How do we improve you individually as a person, and then make you a better partner? So this portion of the class that we are still in the self-awareness piece. And so today we are going to continue to identify areas of growth for you so that we can figure out, how your emotions have been influencing you, and if there are things that you need to do differently moving forward. Okay? Why do you only see me once a week? You guys want more than one class? So I will tell you this before I jump in. Hey Des, thank you so much. I have been thinking about putting together a community outside of TikTok just in case we get banned. And I also just realized that somebody told me that they were trying to subscribe to my channel, but since the ban that you're not able to subscribe to new channels. So I am actually in the process of moving this off of TikTok. And so there will still be the free class every week, but I'm thinking about moving it off of TikTok just because, thank you for the hearts. Hey Trey, just because I just feel like, this is a lot going on over here. Would you guys be open to that? Like, again, there will still be, the free classes every week. You will have the option if you want additional support or additional classes or one-on-one time to pay for like an upper level, but I'll still have the free tier. Like I promised y'all, I told you I would show up every week for 15 weeks for free, and I'm going to continue to do that. But I was just wondering if I don't really like this just sitting here talking to a screen. I like getting in people's business. I like stepping on toes. I like asking questions, and I feel like I can't do that here. A lot of professors have been shadow banned. Yeah, me too. My last few videos, another Professor Hamilton emailed me or sent me a message today asking me the same question. I feel like I have been shadow banned too because my videos went from 200K, 600K. My last video got like 500 views, 600 views. And those are actually like really important, where I was talking about, what to do if your partner don't open up or if you don't open up. So yeah, I just want to not be here if I don't have to. I can still join on live, but I will give you guys the option to join me on Zoom so I can really ask questions and really get in your business. That's what I really want to do. So I'm going to keep working on that, Zoom or Google. Okay, so I'll keep working on that, and then I will let you know when it is available so that you guys can start to migrate wherever. So like I said, last week we talked about what emotional intelligence is. We talked about the different components, but then we also talked about, thanks for tapping in. I see you guys. So we also talked about the purpose of emotions, right? So before I can teach y'all anything about emotional intelligence, I have to change the way that you think about emotions. A lot of us were taught that we should ignore our emotions. We should suppress our emotions. Nobody cares about our emotions. So that's what we've done our whole lives. But you got to be able to change that if you're going to improve your emotional intelligence, right? Emotions are messengers, right? They are here to tell you something. Right? They're not something that you should just ignore. They're not just going to go away. Just because you ignore them, they don't go away. What happens is when you ignore your emotions, it just means that they're going to show up in other ways, in other areas of your life that you probably don't expect. You got the books I recommended. Great. Let me know when you read them and what you think of them. So like I said, suppressing your emotions don't make them go away. It simply buries them until they decide to resurface, and they're going to resurface in ways that you probably don't even think about or don't even recognize. The more you ignore your feelings, the more they influence your behaviors, your physical health. There's a lot of studies out here that talks about how your emotions, especially like the negative ones, and when you don't deal with them in a healthy way, how they impact your actual health. And so let me give you some examples of what happens when you ignore your emotions. I wrote down a few examples. So let's say your partner consistently leaves household chores undone. Even after you mentioned it and you talked about how much it bothers you, instead of addressing it again, you'll just say, it's not worth bringing it up. I'll just do it myself. Right? This is the I'm fine line. Like, how are you? Well, I'm fine. Not really, because you're really sick of doing everything yourself. But every time you say something, nothing changes. And so you just keep doing this. You just do it yourself. And so what happens in the short term, you stay quiet, thinking that you're avoiding conflict. But in the long term, the frustration is going to build. You're going to start feeling resentful. You're going to start snapping over small things like how they chew or how they load the dishwasher. And then eventually, any unrelated argument is going to explode. And now your partner's going to be confused because you thought he thinks it's just about the dishes when it's not that serious, right? But really what it is the issue is that it's not really about the chores being undone. It's about feeling unheard and unappreciated. All right, so suppressing those emotions often leads to resentment or passive-aggressive behaviors. Okay? Let me give you another example. I got quite a few down here. I'm not going to give you all of them. Let's talk about a breakup. You go through a painful breakup and you don't want to seem weak. You're not sweating this person. Thank you for the gift. You're not sweating this person, so you brush it off. And so you just say, I'm over this person. I'm over the relationship. It wasn't that serious anyway, and you try to stay busy. You throw yourself into work or the kids or whatever extracurricular activities that you have, and you pretend that you're okay, but you know that you're not. And so what happens in that situation, in the short term, you are avoiding the feeling of being sad. So you're distracting yourself with work or social activities or other people that you know that you don't really want, you just wasting their time. In the long term, that sadness doesn't disappear. Right? It's going to show up as emotional numbness. And then when you go to get in another relationship, you're going to have trouble connecting with this new person. All right, so suppressed sadness is going to lead to an emotional detachment, making it harder for you to build deeper connections in the future. Does that make sense? Y'all see why y'all can't suppress your emotion? And I will say this, right? I don't think it's also about us suppressing emotions or trying to ignore or avoid them. I also think sometimes we just don't know how to process the emotions. We don't know what to do. We're just so overwhelmed and we're so consumed with these emotions and we don't know what to do with them. And so there is going to be a class, I don't know which one it is, where I'm going to teach you how do you process your emotions. Right? What do you do? How do you know what they're trying to say to you? How do you know what they're trying to tell you? What you need to do with them? There will be a class on that. I know next week we're talking about your emotional triggers. It might be the class after that, but I will see. So yeah, this is just some of the examples. I can give you more later, but I don't want to just go through all of them here. Examples of what happens when you suppress your emotions. So like I said, the more you suppress your emotions, it doesn't make it go away. Instead, what happens is a few things can happen. One, either things are going to build up like pressure in a bottle and you're going to explode. And you're likely going to explode over something that's so minor. But because you've been holding all this other stuff in, it could be something usually you wouldn't care about. But because you have all of the other emotions built up and pent up, it's like shaking a soda bottle and letting the top off. So that's one thing that can happen when you suppress your emotions. They can also show up as passive-aggressive behavior. Now you walking around the house like everything is cool, but you being passive aggressive. Oh, it would have been nice if. Who want to deal with that? Suppressing your emotions also affects your physical health. So there's been studies that show that when you don't deal with your emotions, or when you have so many negative emotions, they start to show up like a headache or insomnia or tension. Nobody wants that. And then it can also damage your relationship, because unspoken feelings can create disconnection. Right? So which one of those do y'all do? Build it, let it build up like pressure, act passive aggressively, have had it affect your physical health, or has it damaged your relationship? Build up and passive aggressive, all of the above. Yeah, we gonna work on it though. I think somebody asked for an example of passive aggressive behavior. So that can look like a lot of things. One, it could be the silent treatment. I think that's a big one. It could be one of those backhanded comments. I think the backhanded comment, like, that's a big one. What other? Well, let me see if I can think of another example of passive aggressive. It could be like sarcasm. Yeah, sarcasm. That's a good one. So all of these are passive aggressive behaviors that people engage in when they are holding in their emotions that they're not processing. The silent treatment. Yeah, we're going to get y'all together, because we're not going to do this after the end of the class. Do y'all understand why y'all do this? Like, where did you learn it from? You store it in your body and need physical therapy. Yeah, this is real. Yeah, build it up and let it physically affect you. Physical effect, disconnection, build up. Yeah. And so all of this stuff is, you learned it from your parents. You hate confrontation. So we'll get back to the confrontation thing when we get to the parents. Yep. And so here's the thing, and I'm glad a lot of you are saying your parents is where you learned it from. Your parents are your first teachers. Whether it's your parents, your kid, whoever cares for you in your first few years of life or growing up, right? They teach you a lot of stuff. Sometimes it is subconsciously. They teach you what love is. They teach you a definition of love. They teach you how to communicate. Like, our parents or our caregivers is really where we learn a lot of who we are. And if we aren't careful, or if we don't unlearn it, right? This is how we end up in this situation. But I am so glad that all of you guys are, aware enough to know that, maybe some of the things that I do are not healthy, right? And willing to unlearn this behavior, because it's not easy. But I'm glad that we are here. Can you send this live as passive aggressive behavior to somebody? Sure, go for it. So suppressing the emotions, that's not what we're going to do. Instead, we are going to learn how to understand what it is our emotions are trying to tell us, and consciously make the decision of how to respond in situations. So let me give you the definition of emotions, right? This is help you understand why you should not ignore them. So I have two definitions. Emotions are a natural, instinctive state of mind derived from one's circumstances, mood, or relationships with others. And relationships with others, we're going to talk about that today. Or emotions can be considered instinctive or intuitive, or an intuitive feeling distinguished from reasoning or knowledge. Thanks for checking in. Thank you, guys. Thanks for the gifts, right? So remember, if you guys were here last week and I showed you the picture of the brain, were all of you here last week? You said repeat the definition. So emotions are a natural, instinctive state of mind deriving from one's circumstances, mood, or relationships with others. And then the second definition is instinctive or intuitive feeling distinguished from reasoning or knowledge, meaning it's different from thinking logically. And so if you guys remember from last week, the brain picture, right? Remember, this is everybody's brain, and everything that we see, feel, hear, touch sends a signal to our brain. The prefrontal cortex, this is like your forehead. This is where you think. This is where you reason. But every signal goes through the limbic system first, and this is where you feel. So you always have an emotional reaction first. I don't care if you're a man, a woman, girl, boy, young, old, black, white, it doesn't matter. We all have the same brain. This is why we talked about last week that it's not true that men are more logical and women are more emotional. It's not true, because we all have the same brain. Our brain is wired to give emotions the upper hand regardless. Right? So when people are in that emotional state, when they're yelling, screaming, hollering, cussing, they're stuck here. The signal has not gone to the prefrontal cortex for them to think about what they're feeling or think about how to react to, how to respond to the emotion that they're feeling. And so you heard the definition was instinctive or intuitive feeling, you hear, separate from this, right? So they're different. Yes, this I will upload this to YouTube within a day or two. Yes. And if you're on the email list, you will get the email once it's posted. If not, you'll just have to check YouTube. So again, your feeling, your emotions are different than your logic and how you think about it. So that's a good question. The difference between emotions and feelings. So people often use them interchangeably. There is a slight difference. So let me try to think of a good way to explain it. Feelings are how your emotions present in your body. Yeah, I mean, people use it interchangeably, and we know what you're talking about, but technically, there is a difference. Okay, so with these definitions of emotions, people are often surprised by their strong emotions because they expect to always be in control. And this was me, right? I'm a lawyer. I'm a logical thinker. I'm not emotional. I'm not one of those emotional women. I can think through everything until I couldn't. Right? Until I couldn't. And a lot of times when we are ignoring or we are suppressing our emotions or trying to control our emotions, what you're really trying to do is control the future. Right? For an example, Bentley, my dog, sitting right here on the floor, I'm sure he'll make an appearance soon. He had a doctor's appointment today to get his teeth cleaned. But I didn't know that they had to put him to sleep to clean his teeth. And I almost canceled that appointment because of fear. I was trying to control the future and try to make sure that nothing happens. He's only 8 pounds. I was trying to control the future and make sure that nothing happened to him due to my fear. Yeah, I was, aside from the cost, because at this point, as much I have in the last 2 weeks, the amount of money I have spent on this dog, I should have just had a kid. But yeah, right? I was fearful of what could happen. And so what I was trying to do was control the future. But I didn't cancel the appointment. I let him go. And I just prayed all day until they called me and said he was saying that he was ready. Okay, so I see you guys still talking about emotion versus feeling. So let me say, so I Googled it. Let's see if this can help provide. Thank you so much for the gift, Thea. Let's see if this can help with it, an explanation. Because I actually haven't thought about this part much. While often used interchangeably, emotions refer to the basic but often physiological state like happiness, sadness, or anger, while feelings are nuanced interpretation. So that somebody, I saw somebody in here commented. Let me see if I can go back because I feel like that was a really good. Who I saw a really good one. Yeah, so Shannon. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong. Feelings are how you interpret your emotions, right? So my emotion was fear. I felt like something might happen to him because he only weighs 8 pounds and they had to put him to sleep. Thanks, lovely J85. Does that make sense? The feeling that I was experiencing was fear. I mean, the emotion was fear. I felt like he was going to, something might happen to him if they had to put him to sleep, right? And that makes sense, right? If you ever heard people say feelings are not facts, you couldn't hear me. So the emotion that I was experiencing was fear. Yeah, the emotion was fear. The feeling was I felt like something could happen to him because he's only 8 pounds and they had to put him to sleep. All right, and so this is where the idea of feelings are not facts comes from. Yes, subjective from objective. I think that's also comes into play here. Feelings are, I think, the interpretation. So I'll give you another example. If your partner does not answer the phone, you might feel like he's cheating. I might feel like my partner is just at work late. Sure, you can see Bentley. Come here, Ben. He's late. He might still be under anesthesia. He usually comes and makes an appearance. Come here. So come here. I scared you. I'm sorry. Come here. He joined us last week. He not answering the phone. We ride that down. But what if he was just in a car accident? Definitely was out cheating. No. See, say hi, Ben. Thank you. Say hi. Say I'm a sleepy boy. Did he die? Y'all are crazy. We're going to work on this. No, he's not definitely out cheating. They said hi, Ben. You say hi. Say hi. Not definitely out cheating. We're going to work on this when we get to the whole conflict resolution. Anyway, so are we clear on the difference between feelings and emotions? Yes, this is recorded. It will be on TikTok within a day or two. If you're on the email list, you will receive the replay in your email. If not, you'll just have to check. How do you get on the email list before you guys ask? The link is in my bio. Click on the link. You got to click open. And then the first one is for, you want to get down there? Go lay down. The first one is for the email list for this class. So yes, it will be posted on YouTube. Last week, the first week's is already up there. So if you missed it. I did not upload the after hours part. I figured people, it was, so the whole last week, we were on for over 2.5 hours. I feel like that was too long to put, up for on YouTube. So no, I did cut out our after hour conversation. What specific conversation, what examples were you looking for? I can go back and try to find it. But yeah. So if you just go to the YouTube channel, the last week's class is up there already. And if you subscribe to the email list, then you'll be notified once this one comes up. So what do I think about autism and emotional awareness? I'm going to come back to that in a second. That is, I have actually made a note to that because I was reading my book yesterday. I'm going to come back to that. EQ after hours. Okay, I can do that. I can upload the EQ after hours. Clearly, I'm going to have to cut this whole conversation about Bentley out, and I'll add this to the after hour. So, I am reading Permission to Feel, one of the books that I mentioned yesterday. So, autism I'm going to come back to, But ADHD, so I actually have been diagnosed with ADHD. I don't know if my ADHD presents a problem for my emotional awareness, though. At least not for me. And mine is actually untreated at the moment, which is a whole nother conversation, y'all. But autism, I am going to come back to. I also heard that too, that you can't buy gifts anymore if you after the ban, which is why we want to just take this off of here at some point. But okay, let's get back to the class. So we talked about the difference between feelings and emotions. That part y'all understand. We talked about what happens if you suppress your emotions. We talked about the purpose of emotion. So like I said, people often try to suppress their emotions, and it's because they're trying to control things, right? That's how we got on the topic of Bentley, because I was trying to control the future when I was going to cancel his appointment. But what people don't realize is that emotions are part of how your brain responds to the world, right? They are going to be tied to your past experiences, your unmet needs, your personal values, your environment, right? So there's a lot that goes into your emotions and how they come out. So bottom line is, don't ignore them, okay? I know they feel uncomfortable. I know, look now, Bentley back. I know they are uncomfortable. I know, they don't always feel good, but I promise they are there to tell you something, right? And we talked about this last week too, right? You have to ask yourself, what is it that this emotion is trying to tell me? All right, because I told you the pain will leave once you learn your lesson. Yes, we will also talk about attachment styles. So let's get into different areas. Yes, I can repeat the last part. So, right, emotions are they're a part of how your brain responds to the world, and they are tied to your past experiences, your unmet needs, your personal values, and your environment. Okay. So now we're going to talk about emotions affect your life in various ways, different areas. We're going to talk about 3 of those aspects of your life tonight. We're going to talk about how they affect your decision making. We're going to talk about how they influence what you focus your attention on. And we're going to talk about how your emotions influence your relationships. And then we'll go over the reflection question. I need everybody to get their journal and their pen together, because I've told y'all last week, right? I don't do all of the talking. Y'all have to do some work and some self-reflecting. So I need you guys to get your journal, get a pen, or if you're going to write it in your phone or something else, and let me know when you guys have it. Hey, Mickey. Thank you so much for the gift. Ready? Okay, so let's start with decision making. When you are consumed with emotions, right? When you are under the influence of your emotions, such as anger or sadness, or even if you're happy and you're elated or joyful, you're going to perceive the world differently depending on the mood that you're in, right? And the choices that you make at that moment, they're going to be influenced by your emotion. You think about, you ever remember like being a kid, or maybe your kids do this? They want to come ask you something, but then they realize that you are not in a good mood, and then like, oh, I'm not going to ask you now. Or when you were a kid, you're like, we gotta wait till mom is in a better mood, right? It's because if she's in not in a great mood, or dad, whomever, you feel like you're not going to get the response that you want, right? That is one example of how your emotions dictate your decision making. Another one some of y'all can relate to, when you are filled with passion and you're in a very passionate moment, you decide to not do the things that you would typically do to avoid getting pregnant or STD. You're so consumed with passion, you tell him to go ahead and shoot the club up. Again, another example of how emotions can influence your decision making. Or some of us avoid difficult conversations out of fear. Or if maybe you're stressed out, you go and buy things out of impulse, right? These are all examples of how decisions can influence, how emotions can influence your decision making. So everybody, get your pen and paper out. I want you to think of a decision that you have made, maybe a decision that you regret. That might be an easy one to process. Think about a decision that you've made, maybe one that you have regretted, or maybe one that you're proud of. Either one. What emotion influenced that choice? And I'll give you a few minutes to think about it and write it down. Think of a decision that you have made, whether it is one that you have regretted or one that you are proud of, and think about what emotion influenced that choice. And I forgot to remind you guys of the rules earlier, but you guys know that this has to be a safe space. I'm going to share one of my recent decisions with you guys, but absolutely this has to be a safe space. So that means no criticizing. That means no judging what people share, because, you know, some of these things, I know at least what I share with you is going to be pretty sensitive. So, you know, got to be safe. No projecting, meaning no projecting your experiences on other people. You are allowed to talk about your own experiences, but don't put your experience on other people. No generalizing. So no all women this, all men that. None of that. You can talk about it from your experience, a person that you dated, a man you dated, a woman you had this encounter with, but don't put it on everybody. And then, of course, be honest. That's a good one. You were scared of the political climate, so you attended your first protest today. Yeah, being in love. Is being in love an emotion? So we're going to spend a whole class on love. Sometimes I think it can be classified as an emotion, but sometimes I think there's something more to that, though. So dig a little bit deeper. Is it, when you say being in love, what specifically about the relationship? Was it the desire to be wanted? The desire, you don't want to be alone, the fear of being alone, right? So dig a little bit deeper. I don't think love is really the thing. It's something else back there. Stop school because you're afraid of, yep. So a decision you made was staying in your marriage longer than you should have. What emotion made you stay? You ended things abruptly because you felt neglected. Yep. I'm glad you guys are able to identify the emotion. Nay, Angelique, when you say you stayed in your marriage, what emotion influenced that decision? Getting married for being fear of being alone. Fear of being alone. Okay, pride. So I will, a recent decision that I have made is to move back to Philadelphia. The reason that I made that decision, I think there are a few emotions. So a few months ago, I was in a space where I was spiraling, and I had passive thoughts of, if I didn't wake up, I would be okay with this. If you guys understand, right? Not actively wanting to unalive myself, but if it happened, I wouldn't have been upset about it. And also loneliness, that scared me because, right? Yes, I know people in the DC area, but like my real people are between Philly, one in Atlanta, one in Florida, right? So what I was explaining to my friends is that, yes, I know people here, but I don't have people here that we could just sit on the couch and do nothing, right? That type of people. Like, that's what I'm missing here, right? The real closeness, the real connection. The people here we go out, like I have my wine friends, but drinking at the time was a problem. And so like, it scared me, right? If I'm being honest. And so for me, my decision was, I'm moving back to Philly where my people are. And oddly enough, now that I'm no longer in that space, I don't know if I still want to move back. but I've already listed my house to be rented out. I've already started packing. Can you look? I only stopped packing because I don't have a tenant yet. And believe it or not, let me tell you, I was sitting here today, like 3 people came to see the house today. And I think it was the last woman that came. She was like, "You look familiar." And I'm like, "Me?" Like, cause I'm not from here. Like, people have said it, but I'm like, I'm not from here. So it ain't, you don't know me. And she said, "Oh, I take your class on TikTok." I'm like, that was pretty funny. So was it fear? Yes, part of it was fear because for me, I was afraid that the passive thoughts would become more active, and that I might do something to myself, right? A fear of what would happen if I stayed alone or stayed in this lonely space. All right. So for me, that is, as I do the work too with y'all. So that is for me a recent decision, and now I have to deal with it. I know that I get anxious when I think about having to pack all this stuff. So yeah. So that is one way that emotions influence our decision making. Have any of you maybe thought about a decision that you've made and you didn't realize that it was an emotional decision? It's okay to change my mind. So somebody else said this to me, but I feel like I done made all this noise, like, "Oh, I'm moving back to Philly." My godmom called me today, like, "Are you back yet?" Because I had said my house was going to be available I was going to be out of here by January 31st. So my godmom called me today. This is the second time she done called me. I didn't answer the first time. And she like, "Are you back yet?" And I'm like, "No, I'm not back yet." And I'm like, somebody else asked me today, like, "Did you leave yet?" One of my friends here, he like, "Did you leave yet?" I'm like, "No, because I don't have a tenant." I just feel like I made all this noise and I made this big fuss about moving back, and I've already told people and I've already started packing. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Another decision. So I have lots of these examples. When I quit my job, when I stopped representing the IRS, I told you I used to work for the IRS, kind of, sort of. And I woke up one day and I said, I quit. That is a whole nother story of how I quit my job. So it was during COVID, and I didn't even have Bentley at this time. So I was just in a house by myself, and I had been crying for days. And I'm like, I've been doing the same work for 4.5 years at this point. It's nothing new, but crying for days. And I finally woke up like, I felt like a kid that got a beating and their parents told them to go to their room. And I felt like, I don't got to do this. And I quit my job. It's okay to change my mind. But then, so here's the thing. If I change my mind, am I going to get lonely again? Like, what do I do if those feelings come back? I still am in the house by myself for days. Like, outside of people coming to visit the house, see the house now. I go days without seeing other people. Like, if I don't go to the grocery store, or if I don't talk to my friends, like, on FaceTime. So, like, I'm usually on FaceTime with one of my friends, like, every day, because literally I do not see other people. Like, I work in a house. It's me and Bentley in this house. And I'm like, I love my house. Like, every time I'm like, "Oh, it's so nice," I just don't say that, because it's going to make me not want to rent it out. So yeah. The same way I told him I would, tell him I wasn't. I'm going to think about it, y'all. I'm going to think about it. Yeah, I don't have a tenant yet, but people have been coming, like 2-3 people a day, and still no tenant. And I think it's been listed for about a month now. So yeah, that's another decision that I made. So decision making clearly is one way that emotions influence the things that, we do. And this is not to say that you may have made a bad decision. I don't believe in regrets. There may have been a better decision that you could have made, but I don't live my life with regrets. I don't believe in regrets, only lessons. So It's not to say that just because you made a decision based on emotion that it's a wrong decision, right? It's just helping you to recognize that maybe there was a better decision to be made, or at least understanding why you do what you do or why you did what you did. Somebody said that's a great question. Let me see if I can go back and find it. I can't find whatever you said was a good question. So you said what needs to happen for me to not feel alone? That's a great question. Something I would ask you guys. And so I have answered that question. And so that's what I was talking about when I said like the close connection, the people that I could just sit on the couch and do nothing with, that I can truly be me and don't have to be Coach E all the time or don't have to be put together. Even though my friends here are cool, right? I've been here, I've only known them. Well, I guess it's not necessarily about the time. I think it's about the substance of the relationship, which is what really made me think about moving back so I can have those closer connections. I mean, if I got a husband, that could help too, but I don't think he's just gonna break into my house. Yes, no regrets, just lessons. It is what it is. Don't beat yourself up about it. Where do we go from here? Okay. So decision making is one way that emotions influence our lives. Another one is emotions influence what we focus on. So our emotional state determines where we direct our attention, what we remember, and what we learn. Okay, so I'm here to say it again. Our emotional state determines where we direct our attention, what we remember, and what we learn. And so I thought this was interesting. So when you experience what we consider a negative emotion, your brain creates cortisol, which is the stress hormone. And then when you experience a positive emotion, your brain produces serotonin. Yes, this is the second key point. Your emotions. So the first one was your emotions influence decision making. This is the second one. Emotions influence what you focus on and what you give your attention to. Right? And so your negative emotions, sometimes, I don't think that negative emotions are all bad. Right? I think those emotions, fear, anxiety, anger, I think it actually helps to narrow your issues or things that are maybe going wrong or challenges that may need to be fixed. All right. So when you are anxious, if you fully understand your anxiety, you are able to figure out what issue you need to address. So I'll use my anxiety for a reason, because clearly I got to claim that I got everything. But anxiety is also something that I deal with, right? And so at one point, I thought I was just so overwhelmed because I had so much on my plate and so much to do. But what I realized is once I started using a planner, and this is what I made a video about the other day. Once I started using a planner and writing things down because I was so overwhelmed thinking I didn't have time, I realized that it was actually my anxiety and not me being overwhelmed. I was concerned that, oh, I don't have time to do everything. Girl, yes, you do. And the real issue was me worrying about what I had to do. So the second part, so this is number 2. I want you guys to write down a time when your emotions kind of shaped what you were focusing on, what you noticed, what you ignored, and then what was the result. Yeah, planning can help. And I'm not even good with writing things down. But what I realized is that I would be so, oh my God, I got all this to do. I got all this to do. I realized that took up a lot of time. Recall a time when an emotion shaped what you noticed or ignored, and what was the result. Mm-hmm. You ignored your partner's feelings, and that led to the ending of the relationship. Mm-hmm. That's a good one. Do you know why you ignored your partner's feelings and emotions? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think this is a good part. So some of this stuff is coming from, I told you about this book last week, Permission to Feel. I'm not going nowhere, Ben Ben. Um, Let me turn this around. This is backwards. And how do I turn the camera around? You guys see? Take a screenshot. I put it in the... All right, so he talks about this a lot in this book. The way he talks about it, though, it's a lot in reference to children, because while he's talking about like what you focus on, he talks about how, you know, if a child is focused on their home life, maybe unfortunately they are in abusive, you know, have an abusive environment at home, or the child is hungry, or the child has to be concerned about their parents' safety, they're not going to be able to focus in school. If a kid is experiencing bullying, they're not going to be able to focus on school, right? They're focused on other things, right? The fear of the bully means I can't focus in class. Right? If me and my partner are going through issues, the fear of them breaking up with me, the fear that the relationship may be over, means I can't focus at work. I don't want to be alone. I have a fear of being alone. And so I ignore my kids, I ignore my friends, because I'm so focused on trying to save this relationship. I ignore flags because, yep. Mm-hmm. Right. So part of what I want you guys to realize with this is that I talk to a lot of people, and a lot of people, or there are people that like to blame a lot of external things for the way that their life is. But sometimes it is you. Thank you for the gift, Kiki love. Right? Sometimes it is you. And this is not to make you feel bad. What I want you to realize is that if you are the reason that something in your life is the way it is and you don't like it, that means you also have the power to change it. Right? And that's the part that I want you to recognize. Okay. And the third area, that how long can it take to change a bad habit? So I think that's up to you. The first thing you got to do is be aware of it, right? You can't change anything that you're not aware of. So awareness, I think, is the biggest piece. Awareness and wanting to change. I think those are the two things that are the hardest part. So you have to be aware of it. You have to want to change it, and you got to know how to change it. I just had a consultation yesterday with a husband. Him and his wife have been separated, but they want to try to work things out. And so I think what I told them is there's a difference between wanting things to work and things being able to work. And then I said, you both have to be on board because it's not a one-sided thing. It can't be only one person. I've had to have that difficult conversation. I had a client, we just stopped working with each other, but I had to ask her, do you feel like your husband likes you or even loves you or even likes you? And she said no. And I had to be honest with her, you can't do, it doesn't matter how many sessions that we have. It doesn't matter how much we work on, your areas of growth. If you don't even feel like he likes you, we got to have a different conversation. Right? So you said, how do you change things? You got to be aware of it. You got to want to fix it. And you got to know how to fix it. So what if people in your life refuse to take accountability for their part? And that's a real thing. I think it comes down to how you handle them. If you know for a fact that they're not going to take accountability, I wouldn't put them in a situation to make them take accountability. Because here's the other thing. I sometimes have conversations with people and they want their partner to say, I'm wrong. And if you have a partner that's not mature enough to admit when they are wrong, they're not going to say, I'm wrong. However, just because they don't, right? And so you have to be smart about who you give your energy to. And don't try and force people to do something that they know that they're not going to do. And it's extremely difficult. Right? So that same woman that I was telling you that I had to ask her if she thinks her husband likes her. What were we having a conversation about? I think it was he didn't pay one of the bills that he's responsible for. And one of her things that we were working on together was how she communicates to him. And so we were talking about how do you bring this up to him? And of course she was just going to say, well, you ain't paid the bill and now we got this late fee. I'm like, that is a way. I don't know if that's the most effective way, especially if he has already expressed his concern or he doesn't like the way that you talk to him. So let's try to come up with a different way of how to address this issue of him not paying the bill on time and you now having a late fee. And so what we ended up coming up with is when she went to go and have the conversation with him, it was, instead of saying you did not do this, right? Remember, we haven't gotten to this part, but right, you as accusatory, people are going to shut down. Focus on the action. Hey, babe, the light bill hasn't been paid, and so now we have this late fee. If he pays the light bill every month, he knows that's his bill, and you come and say, oh, hey, we have a late fee because the bill wasn't paid. He knows that he is the one that did not pay it. And so sometimes you just have to be mindful of who you are dealing with, right? This is where emotional intelligence comes in. And we're going to talk a lot about communication, right? We're just working on self-awareness right now because I need you guys to be aware of, your emotions and identifying them before we can even get to communication. So that's why we're spending the first few weeks talking about self-awareness and your own emotions. And then we'll move into how do you communicate those emotions. So we will talk about this more when we get to that. But when you recognize who you are talking to, when you see that people are not going to take accountability, don't stress yourself out about it. Some people are committed to being wrong. Yes, I statements also work. But in this situation, she wasn't telling how she felt. She wanted to let him know that there was a late fee. And so instead of saying you didn't pay the light bill wasn't paid. He knows that he's the one that's supposed to pay it. So in that situation, it wasn't necessary to point it out to make him shut down. Yeah. That you think about this with your husband. This is what emotional intelligence is. This is what effective communication is. You have to change how you speak depending on who you are talking to. I have friends that I can be very direct with. Why would you do that? And I have some friends that I have to be more gentle with. Help me understand what you were thinking about. What were you trying to accomplish? So you have, this is what it, and people are like, oh, that's a lot of work, but this is what it takes to have a healthy relationship. Ideally, you only have one partner. And so it's only one person really that you really got to lock in and understand. I mean, your friends too, but you probably do that naturally. I don't know why people get crazy or we act different when it comes to our partner. It's the same skills for any relationship. Like I said, I know I talk about romantic relationships most of the time because that's who I work with, but these skills work in any type of relationship. Correct. She wasn't wrong. It's about how you deliver it, right? So when whomever said that, how do you talk to somebody that doesn't take accountability? You're not wrong that they did not take accountability, but how are we going to get to the solution? Because being accusatory and saying you didn't do this or you need to, it's not helpful. In her situation, what was important is that the bill got paid, right? I don't know what happened. Oh no. It's saying inactivity, but we talking. Oh, what happened? Oh no. It's saying inactivity, but we talking. Thank you for the gift, Mocha Latte. So it's not back on my screen. It's saying that it's going to end in 4 minutes because of inactivity. Complete the verification. Usually it's a puzzle that pops up, but it's not popping up. And the screen is dark for me. Okay, hold on. Give me 1 second, guys. See, TikTok is against me. It was trying to kick me out. I tried to leave and come back too, and it froze. Okay, I'm back now. Can you see me? Can you guys hear me? Now I can see you guys. I couldn't before, it was dark. Okay, y'all still here. Perfect. Fantastic. There was a question. So what if your tone is good, your delivery is fair, and you're still not reaching the middle ground? Again, we're going to talk a lot about communication, but there's a lot more that goes into figuring out why you still aren't reaching it. So, side note, I'll give you guys a preview. So with communication, there are 4 parts to communication. You expressing how you feel. That's 1. 2 is them receiving what you have to say and understanding what you said. And then the reverse, them responding to what you said and then you receiving and understanding what they said. All right, so there's 4 different parts to communication. Without knowing where, you have to figure out where the breakdown is first. Is it how you are talking to them? Is it them understanding? Because what you got to realize is that in the United States, the average person only has a 7th or 8th grade education. That read at a 7th or 8th grade level means if you read at a 7th or 8th grade level, you comprehend at a 7th or 8th grade level. And so a lot of people have comprehension issues, right? And this is not to be funny, right? Genuinely, a lot of people have comprehension issues. So you got to know who it is that you are dealing with. And you got to figure out where the breakdown is. And is it a genuine comprehension issue, or are they just being a butthole and they're trying to be manipulative and avoid it? 2 different things. So you have to figure out where the breakdown is first. It could be a few reasons. Maybe you aren't using the right language that they can receive. Maybe you aren't communicating in a way that they can receive. Maybe you said it's not your tone. I don't know. You might have to ask them, is there anything that I've done to make you feel like you can't talk to me? It might be something that you say to, make them shut down or not want to talk. You guys might be focusing on right or wrong. It's not about right or wrong when you are having disagreements. You both are right for how you feel. Where do we go from here? So there's a lot that goes into communication. We're going to spend a lot of time in this class. If it is a comprehension thing, one of the things that I like to say, or like if I say something and they're what they say back is not responsive to me, what did you hear me say? Because ain't no way that was your response to what I just said. What did you hear me say? But we're getting ahead of ourselves. We're getting ahead of ourselves. We're going to get to communication. Right now, we're still talking about how emotions impact these different areas of your life. I'll answer more questions after class. We're almost done with class. So the third place that we're going to talk about tonight is how your emotions influence your relationships. Emotions affect how you show up in your relationship. For an example, if your partner does not make you feel safe and secure, meaning you feel insecure, that's going to affect how you show up in your relationship. This is what I want you to do. Think about 3 people. If you have a partner, think about your partner. If you have children, think about your children. Maybe a best friend, a parent. Just identify 3 people. And I want you to write down what feelings or what emotions surface when you think about this person. And I need to be like a living person. So we're not dealing with grief here. So think about 3 people: your partner, your kids, your parent, your best friend, whomever. What emotions come up when you think about this person? And then the second part of that is, how does that emotion affect how you show up in that relationship? If you feel insecure when you show up, you might feel the need to go through somebody's phone, to check their social media, to see who they're following, to see what pictures they're liking, because you don't feel secure in that. If you feel unheard, you may feel like, what's the point of sharing how I feel with them, because they're not going to hear me. You feel unheard, and sometimes you show up disconnected. Your partner made you feel unsafe, and now you feel mentally detached. Sarah! Hey! I don't know if you're still here, but I just saw it. Sarah Mag, what's going on? In your marriage, you started finding your partner's spouse as annoying, but there's a reason. Dig deeper. Why does his voice annoy you, or his or her voice annoy you? Why does your spouse's voice annoy you? That's how I should have said it. I love you too. Yep, so with your partner, you don't feel like he understands, and so you distance yourself. She made her family hate me so she could play the victim, right? So you see how these are another way that your emotions impact your relationship. Your life. So relationships is a big one. Think about what your emotions are trying to tell you about this person. That's the hard pill. Your parent does not listen to your opinions and always has to be right, so you avoid deep conversation. You feel misunderstood, so you hold your thoughts and feelings back. Makes sense. You want to continue with the relationship, but he doesn't. Yeah. How many of these emotions would you like to change? Right? Because here's the thing, and I mentioned this last week, relationships are optional. And so anybody that you allow to be in your life as an adult should be a positive addition. And so I want you to start to think about these emotions that you feel towards this person and what is it that they're trying to tell you. And I'm not saying that it's telling you to leave. It might be, but I wouldn't say that initially, right? That wouldn't be my first suggestion. My first suggestion would be, to listen to your emotions. They're telling you that there is an unmet need. What need is not being met for you? How can you work on yourself so you can show up better but not resent them? So I think part of it is, and again, we're going to talk about this later on in the year, but I talk about with problems, right? Is this a me, them, or us issue? This is a me thing, a them thing, or us. If it's a me thing, that means I have to work on it. If it's a them thing, they have to work on it. If it's an us thing, there are things that both of us need to do to work on it. And so when you are figuring out that your needs are not met, or you want to work on yourself, you can only take ownership of your part, right? What part do you play in this? Hey, Jen, thank you. Right? So you can only take accountability for your part. Once you realize what needs are not being met, right? I think there were quite a few that said you feel unheard. Well, then the part needs to be, well, what would make you feel heard? Are you communicating yourself the most effectively in the most effective way? All right, so that may be an area that you need to grow in. Are you processing your emotions yourself so that when you go and talk to your partner, you know exactly what it is that you need and how to say it to them? Do you need to take a step outside of you, because it's not always about you? Sorry to tell you, Tink Tink. Do you need to take a step outside of you and see things from your partner's perspective? Empathy is going to be a whole class on that. When do you know when to let go? So that's not a simple answer, but I would say you let go when there is not a willingness to work on things, or things cannot be fixed, right? You can't ask somebody for something that they cannot do. I'll give you an extreme example. If he wants kids and she can't give him kids, that's not something that can be resolved unless they want willing to adopt, right? But if he wants, natural kids and she can't give it to him, that's something that cannot be fixed. Things that go against your morals. So you have, and when do you let go? You have to know when you've given it all that you can, and they truly cannot give it. They can't give it to you, and then at that point, it's just whenever you get sick and tired, you got to give them chances. Nothing is linear. It's going to be ups and downs, but it's can this person fix this? Have they shown progress or improvement that they can work on this? Your dad, there is a lack of affection, so now there's a disconnect. That makes sense. So I'll come back to asking some more questions. I want to get to the reflection question for this week. So the reflection question for this week was, what emotion shows up in the slow down, hold on. What emotions show up the most in your day-to-day life, and how does it influence your behavior? Did y'all answer the reflection question? What emotion shows up most in your day-to-day life, and how does it influence your behavior? So y'all have identified the emotion. How does it influence your behavior? And so let me give you an example. I know a person who seemingly will have an attitude. She gets attitudes, right? So when she gets an attitude, she's annoyed, regular attitude stuff. As her and I got closer, what I realized is that it's not that she just has an attitude. This is the way that her anxiety presents. Okay. So for her, if she was to answer this question, what emotions show up day to day for her, it would be anxiety. And how does it influence her behavior? It gives her an attitude. All right. And that is something that she has to be mindful of, because who wants to deal with somebody with an attitude all the time? I mean, not that she has one all the time, but it's pretty often. Who wants to deal with it? Right. And so now she is more mindful of it. And so she can at least say, you know, I'm annoyed, I'm anxious, I need a second. Right? And so this question is designed to help you look at your behaviors so that you are aware of how you are showing up day to day. I know somebody else, her anxiety presents as impatient. Come on, hurry up. I got it. But that's just her anxiety. Slow down, relax. The reflection question for this week. So I post the reflection questions on Sunday for this week. So the one for this week was, what emotion or emotions show up the most in your day-to-day life, and how does it influence your behavior? Right. And so another thing I want y'all to recognize, that everybody identified a negative emotion. I didn't see anybody, but not even just here, even on the post of the reflection question, nobody identified a positive emotion. You didn't know that your lack of patience is your anxiety. So it may or may not be. I think you have to you got to pay attention to it. Oh, you say happiness. Okay. And how does that influence your behavior? Because you feel happy. How does that? I think content can be neutral. You're not good or bad. Yeah. Sorry if y'all gave those. I didn't see those. And so how do those emotions influence your behaviors? Right? Because you also have to be mindful of, yes, you are allowed to have your emotions. You are allowed to experience them, but you should be mindful of how they show up and impact others. All right. So I think another example is, if you might be anxious or because you're running late, and it may influence others because now you are rushing the kids. You're impatient with the kids. You take your emotions out on everyone. Yeah. So we're also going to talk about how you regulate them, how you regulate your emotions. But, right, again, this is just to help you start thinking about things that may be areas of growth for you and things that you may need to work on. The other thing that I wanted to talk about, going back to how it affects our relationships, the reverse is also true. Like how I asked you guys to think about what emotions come up with certain people. It also works in the reverse. You interact with people based on what you are perceiving from them. Oh, this person got an attitude. I'm going to go over here and mind my business. Or at least you think they got an attitude. You think they're angry, so I'm going to avoid them. I think they're sad, and so I'm going to call and check on them. because why you acting funny, right? And so this is where, again, emotions play a part. And so I told y'all earlier that I was going to come back to the conversation about how autism comes into this. And so I think this is one place where autism and emotional intelligence intersect, right? So just how I'm just giving these examples of how what you perceive from the other person dictates how you interact with them. Sometimes people that are autistic, this is the part that they miss. They are not able to pick up on other people's cues. And so because they aren't able to do that, they also don't necessarily know how to respond or engage with that person. All right, this is one of the things that autistic people or people that are on the spectrum have difficulty with, recognizing emotions in other people and knowing the proper way to respond. Right? So like you've ever been in a situation where you are in a room, maybe the person may not be autistic, but they don't know how to read the room. Everybody else is clearly over here, like we chilling, we on this time, and they come in saying something that's inappropriate. Right? So that is another way that, emotions dictate. Yeah, you deal with emotional dysregulation because they're borderline. Yeah. But I'm glad that you are aware of it. I personally think that there are people that are not diagnosed. And so it makes it a little bit harder, right? When you are not aware of things and you're not aware of your areas of growth or things that you don't do well. Right? I don't know how aware that person was that she had an attitude and it impacted people around her until we started saying something to her. Knowing is half the battle. It's the biggest part. How can you read people's emotions better if they are not an emotional person and they keep it hidden? So if they hide it, then there's not really much that you can do. I think the closer you are to somebody, the easier it is. You may not be able to identify exactly like, oh, they feel disappointed or they're sad or they're angry or they feel jealous. I think partly you have to understand what's going on, right? What happened? What is the situation? You got to ask them, how do you feel? The positive emotion is the negative emotion. And this is the same thing. So adults that also don't know how to identify, this is also how you talk to kids and you teach kids how to identify emotions. But because a lot of us were taught to ignore our emotions and not express them, when you become an adult, you still don't know how to express them or identify them. Right? We don't just wake up one day, I'm 21, I know how to communicate. After you told me my whole life, kids should be seen and not heard. Now I'm grown, I'm wake up one day, I know how to communicate. I wake up one day, I know how to identify my emotions. No, it don't work like that. And so I made a video about this the other day. What was it today? Maybe last night? That if you are dealing with somebody that doesn't know how to process their emotions, it's a coping mechanism. They don't know what to do. They are consumed or overwhelmed with these emotions and they don't have the tools to unpack them. Right? And so if you are in this situation, instead of seeking an immediate reaction or immediate response, you might want to ask more gentle questions. Is it okay if I stay here with you or do you need to be alone? Would it help if I sit here and just listen to you and not offer any feedback? Would it help if we talk about something else for a little while to get your mind off of this and then come back? Right? You got to ask those gentle, they might not know. And then when they are in a better space, I think what is helpful is to have a conversation about your communication in general, right? Do you feel like you can talk to me about anything? These are some of the questions in my card game that I don't think I have a deck. But these are some of the questions in my card game, right? Have I done something to make you feel like you can't talk to me? Because sometimes it's not intentional. I had to learn that. I had a guy I was dating. He told me that the way that I responded to him was not helpful. Because for me, you only got about 1 or 2 times to complain about something before we need to talk about a solution. For me personally, right? In my personal life. And I think I naturally jump into solution mode probably with everything. Right? If you come and tell me what's something, now I'm a Leo. If you come and tell me a problem, what we gonna do about it? What you gonna do? How we gonna fix it? Right? And so naturally, when he would share something with me, I jump straight into, so did you try this? Did you think about that? How about this? And so he told me that was probably the first time anybody ever said to me that it's not helpful. And so I was like, wow, here I am thinking I'm being helpful, right? So this is what I'm saying. Like, sometimes people are not aware that what they do is making you feel like they can't talk to you. So, if your partner doesn't open up to you when they're in a better space, right? Ask them, is there something that I do? And so after he told me that, I got into a habit of asking people, one, before you come and talk to me, and my friends are pretty good about this already, so I don't always have to do it with them. What do you need from me? Before you start talking, before you open your mouth, tell me what it is you need from me. Am I just listening to you right now? Am I being your sounding board? Are we going to process this and work through it? You got to tell me up front. You also got to tell me, because I told you I got ADHD. And so if I don't know where my brain is going, I don't know what to hold on to and what's important and what's not. I don't know what to ask questions about and what not. So I ask people in advance, what is it that you need from me right now? And then the other thing that I started doing because of his comment, I stopped offering. I don't tell anybody nothing. But then I ask, can I offer you a different perspective? Can I make a suggestion? And you know what's so crazy? The guy I dated after that one always wanted me to share. He was like, yo, you don't have to ask me, just say it. And I'd be like, great. The last guy told me it wasn't helpful. He didn't want to hear it all the time. And then literally the guy right after that was like, don't ask, just tell me. I need all of it. So I still ask, like, either what do you need from me right now? And I always ask, can I make another suggestion or offer a different perspective? You need somebody that's in tune with their emotions. I mean, it's great if you can find it, but it's also likely that you may not. But if you are really good with yours, that means you might be in a position to help them with theirs. Especially if they're grown and they have never identified or they've never experienced certain emotions. They're not going to know how to identify it, right? I told y'all this last week. If I go to the doctors and I'm sick and the doctor say what's wrong and I don't know, that doesn't make me any less sick. That just means I don't have the vocabulary to share. So this is why I always say, I know people have been putting like, oh, I need my partner to be emotionally intelligent. That's not actually one of my requirements of people that I date. You don't have to be emotionally intelligent. You got to be emotionally mature is my requirement. Emotionally mature means you are at least willing to have the conversations. I can do the rest of the work. Obviously, this is what I do. I can do the rest of the work. I can ask the questions. We can help identify, but you got to be willing to have the conversations. So I don't expect people to be emotionally intelligent. Well, it's nice. I would like it, but that's not a deal breaker for me. How do you get them to express how they feel about you? So let me tell you this. So everything in my outline in terms of actual class is over. At this point, we are just having conversations. Again, you guys know me. If you weren't here, I'm going to go get a glass of wine. I will stick around if you guys want me to, and we can talk and have conversations. But actual class, that was everything that I had